Hey there! Hi, I'm Nick. Welcome to today's session on straw bale gardening. You notice I said hay. This is actually straw. Can anyone tell me the difference between straw and hay? No? Well, let me go ahead and, being a city boy myself, give you an idea of what I learned about the difference between straw and hay. Straw is actually cereal grain, the remnants thereafter of the seed heads. So your barley, your rye, your wheat, any of your cereal grains, the farmer will go ahead and harvest the seed heads and leave the remaining stalks, which are basically hollow straws that we will use to be our container as well as our growing medium. So hay, on the other hand, is usually a alfalfa or a grass type, clover maybe, that is utilized for feeding animals. So I think of it as straw being hollow. It has the ability to serve as bedding for animals, whereas hay is what an animal is going to eat and consume. The advantages of straw versus hay bales are going to be the fact that with straw, you, since the seeds have already been harvested, there's less chance of having any seed infestation within your bales. And the straw is usually cheaper. I've gotten sources locally about $10 to $15, whether you go to Valley Feed Store in Belfair. I believe Hunter Farms is where this one was purchased, and they're around $10 to $15. If you are really worried about herbicides or being strictly organic, you would then need that additional information requested from the farmer or the nursery or garden store you get it. I've even seen them on sale at the Tractor Supply just down the road from here. So, and those are actually certified weed-free, but not organic. A little bit costlier on those. Anyway, once you've gotten your straw bales, you want to position them while they're still dry. Once they're wet, currently, it's going to weigh about 20 to 40 pounds dry. And you can see they're about 4 feet wide by about 2 feet or 18 inches tall. In terms of placement of your straw bales, there's a spider, sorry. There are advantages to getting your straw bale laid out ahead of time. In that once they're wet, they're going to be very heavy. They can absorb about another 40 pounds. So you want to make sure you've sighted where you're going to put them before you go ahead and start the conditioning process. Let me back up and talk about why you want to grow in straw bales. It's convenient for those who may have mobility issues, as it gets your straw bale a bit, it's like a raised bed, except for it gets it a bit higher off the ground. So we would go ahead and the other advantages are if you're a tenant or you don't want to have a permanent garden structure, or if you've got diseased soil, what you can do is just go ahead and locate this on a driveway, on a patio, on a cement length of open field would be ideal. You just want to make sure you have access to water nearby. And in terms of laying them down, the first thing that I've done is going ahead and put down some black plastic over the ground. You could also use landscape fabric or even cardboard. And you just want to do that to separate the ground from the straw bale so that it will lessen the deterioration. When we go ahead and orient the bales, there are choices. Some like to put them with the string forward, some like to put it with the string up. I will talk about the advantages and why I prefer with the string on the forward rather than up. If I were to plant it as such, yes, I've got a larger growing area, it's lower to the ground, but there's a chance when I go ahead and take my hori-hori knife to dig a hole that I actually snap the straw, the twine, and the bale will come uncompressed, and that's going to be a disaster. We can talk about solutions to that in another moment, but I find if you orient the straw bale with the strings towards the front, and you'll notice there's a cut side. It really looks it and shows on this side, cut side versus a folded side on the bottom here. And the advantage of using the cut side up is that as I water and condition the bale, they're just straw end up? So it's going to absorb the water. It's going to absorb the nutrients that I put in here, and it will make it a lot easier for this bee here to condition. So let's see, what else can I start with? In terms of layout, where to place them. For myself, I've got really bad rocky soil in my environment, so I used to also worry with my galvanized containers that I had to crop rotate. The beauty of straw bale gardening is that it's great for heat lovers in that once you've started conditioning, the heat generated within the straw bale will give you up to maybe 2 weeks earlier in the season to start your tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, all those things we never have enough heat during the summer to accomplish here in the Pacific Northwest. So what, once I've gone ahead and positioned my straw bale, I'm going to go ahead and take about a 2-week process if you're using just general lawn. So the conditioning process can take 2 weeks if you are using non-organic, like lawn feed. And we'll talk about this. This is basically a nitrogen source, and you want to make sure it's just a lawn fertilizer. This is a cheaper option. It's going to have a high nitrogen number. So where can I see that down here? A 2603. So this is going to be a high nitrogen source, and what that's going to do is give the microbes and bacteria within the straw bale that already exist. Once you water and give them a nitrogen source, they're going to start breaking down the straw as their carbon source, and it will go ahead and within about 2 to 3 weeks period, it will be ready for you to plant in. If you want to maintain an organic source, then one could use blood meal, or, and I want to say that's got a 1200 usually, or a cottonseed meal, something to that effect. I've even used Milorganite in the past. The advantage of a non-organic source is that you're going to use a less quantity. So when we condition the bales, let me take a step back here. You want to figure out when you want to plant your crops. So knowing that early May is usually our last frost-free day here in the Shelton area, what I would do is, what I've done in the past is take and go back 2 weeks if I'm going with a non-organic source of fertilizer, or 3 weeks if I'm going back with an organic source of fertilizer. So if it's May 3rd that I'm shooting for, I would start conditioning in about mid-April, April 10th, let's say, just to give myself some good time here. So on April 10th, I'll go ahead, have my garden all placed, my straw bales. You can line them up in a straight row if you want. The advantages of that is staking is easier if you want to create a permanent situation. If we have time at the end, I'll show you some photos about that. Otherwise, once you position them, you could also stack them, make it as a container garden. The beauty is it's non-permanent. You're just going to go ahead and at the end of the season, break it all down and utilize what remains as compost for your garden or to cover your in-ground garden beds. The conditioning process with the lawn fertilizer. Now again, make sure it's just lawn fertilizer, not weed and feed, so you don't want to have any anti-weed product within this because that's not going to work to our advantage. The other thing is with a organic source of nitrogen, you want to steer away from slow release because really we're going to be able to, we need the 2 to 3 week period for the conditioning of the bale to occur. So how do I condition the bale? First off, I go ahead and over that 2 week period for the lawn fertilizer option, we would basically on day 1, we're going to go ahead and add a 1/4 cup of the lawn fertilizer, sorry, 1/2 cup of lawn fertilizer. So this is a 1/2 cup. If I were to use Milorganite, I would use a 3 cup. So you can tell you're going to use a lot more product, and that's because there's less nitrogen in your organic for the same amount of mass as the 24 nitrogen within the grass feed. So I would go ahead and sprinkle this lightly over the top on day 1. Then, ideally you'd have a water source nearby. I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and use a 2-gallon jug, and you can put about a gallon of water will be enough to go ahead and saturate the straw bale thoroughly. The beauty about straw is that it can only hold so much, usually about 1 to 2 gallons, and then it's going to go ahead and release the rest. So the problem of overwatering and flooding your root zone, or if we get rainy in the spring season before the garden really gets going, you don't have to worry about the oversaturation and root rot, basically. The disadvantage is when you get hot and you need to make sure, like in July and August, if we get the heat dome again, you're going to want to make sure you're watering every day because your plants are going to be huge and they're going to consume water. So you don't want to let your straw bale dry out. So on the conditioning front, day 1, we've gone ahead and sprinkled a half cup. We watered thoroughly. The other thing I might want to do is take an initial temperature, and I don't have it with me here, but I've got a compost thermometer. I would stick it in and just take a ambient temperature of the straw bale currently. Outside it's say 60 degrees, well, actually 50 degrees. The straw bale will be probably about 50, 60 degrees there as well before we've done anything to it. Now that we've conditioned on day 1, we can see that nothing really has changed. It's about 60 degrees. Come day 2, all we're going to do is water thoroughly. Again, 1 to 2 gallons is all you need per bale this is. So once I've done that, you'll see that it will help to penetrate through. When you're using the 3 cups of material for organic, you'll find it gets really cluttered because we're going to do the nutrients on days 1, 3, 5, and 7 of the first week. And then on days 2, 4, and 6, we're just going to water and keep the nutrients washed into, help them wash down in. So I wouldn't use a high-powered pressure hose to get it in there, because more than likely what's going to happen is it's going to all just go away and saturate out over. So overwatering would also wash away those nutrients that we're trying to use so that the organisms within the straw bale can go ahead and start the decomposition process and create the soil that will be feeding the plants, the roots of your plants. So we've watered, we've conditioned, say on day 5 of the first week, I've taken the temperature every day. Day 5 of the first week, I find it's gotten up to 100 degrees. That's great. That means they are doing their thing. On days 7, 8, and 9 of the process, what I'm going to go ahead and do is feed, but half as much. So if I was using a half a cup of the lawn fertilizer, I'll only use a quarter of a cup. And I'll add that on day 7, 8, and 9, and I'll water each day after that. So if it was the organic version, I would go ahead and, instead of 3 cups, I'd use a cup and a half, and I'd condition the bale as such. So that's day 7, 8, and 9. And that will probably be the maximum temperature. You may hit 130 to hit 140 degrees, and basically the bacteria are just generating heat by the reproduction of themselves. They're multiplying constantly. So as they continue to feed, they're breaking down the cellulose and the plant material that it remains in the straw bale. From there, what we're going to go ahead and do is on day 10, we get out a, got it somewhere, but anyway, this is my 10-10-10 fertilizer, so we're going to want to, because the nitrogen is just helping to break down the bale, we need your plants to have something to feed on over the beginning part of their life. So we're going to take some 10-10-10 non-organic fertilizer. You can do a 5-5-5 if you want to stick with the organic, but again, you're going to use twice as much organic fertilizer than you would for the non-organic. And so I would go ahead, and on day 10 only, I'm going to go ahead and put a cup of 10-10-10 fertilizer across the entire width of the bale. Again, water it in. Every day you're watering. Day 11, I'll take the temp, and if I'm still above 100 degrees, now might be a good time to go either check out my seeds so I can start planting on day 12, or if I've got seed starts already, just have those acclimated while you're conditioning the bale so that they're ready to go at the same time. On day 11, we've done nothing. Day 12, we take the temperature. If it's above 100 degrees, I'd still hold off. You're looking for about 80 degrees internal temperature before the roots, to augment the heat lovingness of the crop that you're planting in here. If it's above, it's really not going to give you any advantage. It's probably going to fry the roots of your plant. So day 12 comes, as long as I'm about 80 degrees, all I need to do is go ahead and I take out my hori-hori, you can do two things. You can either use a seed bed. So I use this old grid that I had, 4x4 grid, just from a cattle panel of sorts. And this gives me a good way to space out 4 inches in the grid. So I know that I can either, if I'm doing seeds or if I'm doing holes like I'm going to do here, I can just go ahead and insert my hori-hori, dig a hole, go on to here in a checkerboard pattern. It's a lot easier to do it this way than for me to get out the yardstick and do it that way. So I'm going every other cell in this instance, and what would be appropriate to plant in here? Well, you could start from transplants. Your heat-loving plants are going to be great. They're going to love it. You can probably get maybe 2 to 3 weeks earlier in your garden setup. So I would go ahead and plant probably about 2 tomatoes, maybe 3 at max if they're not a huge indeterminate variety. They now have what are called dwarf tomatoes that give you all the benefits of an indeterminate, but on a shorter height. So you still get the full-grown tomatoes, but it will work perfect in here. So I've gone ahead and dig a hole, go ahead and take your plant, and you push it in. If you're finding it hard to work with the straw because it is still a bit tight, it hasn't broken down, you're not going to have a crumbly soil that you're going to plant into, I can take my hori-hori and cut actually a hole out, pull the material out, put the root ball in, and put that plug back in to cover up the root zone. If it's become distended, I can always just use potting mix. Don't use garden soil. We're trying to keep a sterile solution here, so we're preventing any weeds and organisms and diseases from impacting our garden. So if I don't have seed transplants, you can also use this as a seed bed. Again, what you would do is simply just take some potting soil or seed starting mix and sprinkle about 2 to 3 inch layer all over the top of here. And then I would go ahead and use a knife or hori-hori to just pack that down, give it a little water to wet it in, and then I can use my grid again if I needed to, and just go ahead and take your seeds. I've got some pea seeds here, and those are really great this early in the season. You can just go ahead and really overplant as much as you need, following the same seed directions as you would on the packet. I'm going to go ahead and put the seeds in, and you want to keep them watered, and then within, well, as usual, your plants will grow from there. What else can I tell you? In terms of staking, when you have huge tomatoes, you'll find it advantageous. You could put a bamboo stake in it. You would want to ideally go all the way through into the ground, but it's really going to depend on where your location is. Ideally, you've got a lawn area that you can go ahead and penetrate. If you're on a concrete or wooden surface, you could also put just heavy pots, planters with soil in them as an anchor at the side, and that could be. I've also seen elaborate structures where, in fact, in my own garden, I put in T-posts on either end. I've got 4 in a row, and I'll go ahead and put a T-post on either end and put a timber across the top and give myself a trellis that's there. That's a little bit more permanent than some people may like if you're a tenant. However, I find that's helpful because the tomatoes, they'll get 8 to 10 feet tall, and you're already about 1.5 to 2 feet above the ground, so you can well imagine a 5-foot tomato stake really isn't going to get you that much of a height over it. So the other things I've seen is you can position them against a fence, and that will give you a natural trellis for it to go up against. They do considerably break down as the season goes on. So I've seen people have used pallets to as a source of wood to fashion their own containers, like a milk crate that's custom designed for it. That will help to hold up the structure. And the other thing I've found is that breakdown at the end of the year, end of the season is really easy because basically this will have decreased in volume. Your plants will have expired. Come about October or so, you can then just take the straw bale and use it in your pots. You can use it in your compost bin, or you can just let them sit. Some people claim they can get a second season out of them. With our heavy saturated rain, The only thing that would probably work in the second season is a root vegetable, a potato, carrots maybe. And it's great because potato harvesting would be really easy. All you do is once you put your potato in and it grows over the season, all you gotta do is just open up the bale, and at the end of the season they almost fall out. It's such an easy harvest. So with that said and done, are there any questions I can gather from you?